welcome to the 3-Minute Quran Study, the place where we critically examine ancient writings. In our quest to find evidence which would support the Islamic narrative, today we will examine the number one document which is used to argue in favor of a historical Muhammad, the so-called Doctrina Jacobi. The events presented in the Doctrina Jacobi take place around the year 634 AD. It is an anti-Jewish pamphlet wherein a Jewish merchant is imprisoned in the city of Carthage for refusing to convert to Christianity. He is then baptized by force. In prison, he prays to God, who reveals to him that it was a good thing that he was baptized. While in captivity, another imprisoned Jew relates a story which he has heard from his brother who lives in Caesarea. The brother supposedly wrote a letter containing the following words: "A false prophet has appeared among the Saracens. They say that the prophet has appeared coming with the Saracens and is proclaiming the advent of the anointed one who is to come. I, Abraham, referred the matter to an old man very well versed in the scriptures. I asked him, 'What is your view, master and teacher, of the prophet who has appeared among the Saracens?' He replied, groaning mightily, 'He is an impostor. Do the prophets come with the sword and chariot?' So I, Abraham, made inquiries and was told by those who had met him, there is no truth to be found in the so-called prophet, only bloodshed. For he says he has the keys of paradise, which is incredible." A lot of people will point to this section as the earliest reference for the prophet Muhammad. But what can we really deduce from this text? French scholar Vincent Desroches, one of the foremost experts on Byzantine literature, has compiled a critical edition of the Doctrina Jacobi, comparing various translations and editions. His conclusion was that the text has survived in an irredeemably altered state, meaning that we cannot possibly reconstruct its original form. So we could already end it here. A text like that cannot be used to support anything. But let's dig a bit deeper. First of all, note that the name Muhammad does not appear in the text itself. Also, it is in contradiction with the Islamic tradition. Muhammad was supposed to be dead by 634 AD and he never made it to Caesarea as part of a military campaign. Israeli archaeologist Yehuda Nevo and his colleague Judith Corran therefore assume that we are looking at a different wannabe prophet, something that was all too common in the 7th century when apocalyptic beliefs were rampant. And indeed, the Doctrina Jacobi itself is in part an apocalyptic text which connects the campaign of the unnamed prophet to the destruction which was believed to take place before the end of the world. Karl-Heinz Ohlig has a different take though. He finds it to be more likely that we are looking at a text from the late 7th century. After all, the fact that the story takes place in 634 AD does not mean that it was written in that same year. He argues that the author deliberately placed his anti-Jewish text in the time when Jews in the Byzantine Empire were baptized by force, to better make his point. During the late 7th century, we see a culmination of apocalyptic beliefs in the tradition of the prophet Daniel. The name Muhammad was not yet present, but there was an emerging belief in an Arab prophet. Many Jews would have placed their hopes onto the new Arab rulers, and be it only to hasten the end of days. Lastly, it is obvious that the larger narrative of the Doctrina Jacobi is legendary and ahistoric in nature. It was clearly a propaganda piece against Jews. In conclusion, we've seen the ahistoric Doctrina Jacobi cannot be accurately reconstructed, that the prophet mentioned therein could not have been Muhammad as he was at the wrong place in the wrong time, and that the narrative better fits the late 7th century than the year 634 AD. In the next episode, we will continue our search for the historic Muhammad. Until then, thank you very much for watching and see you next time.